Hey everyone, welcome back to Web3 Deep Dive Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Wolfson. In today's episode, I'll be speaking with John Arrow. John is the co-founder of FreedomGPT. In this episode, we'll be speaking all about AI tokens, and what FreedomGPT is doing and the goals behind the platform. So, super exciting episode. Get ready. Before starting the interview today, I'd also like you guys to take the time to like and subscribe to the channel, especially if you enjoy the content that you're seeing. Liking and subscribing will keep you up to date with everything. I also want to take the time to thank the sponsors behind Web3 Deep Dive Podcast. Thank you to VeChain and VBetterDAO, which is a sustainability-driven dApp ecosystem built on top of the VeChain Thor blockchain, aiming to promote Web3 adoption and incentivize actions that contribute to meeting the UN's 17 global sustainability goals within Web3. Okay, without further ado, let's get started with today's episode. Hey, John, how's it going?
Hey, going great, Rachel. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for joining the show. So John, before we get started, I'd like you to start off with a brief introduction about yourself, about FreedomGPT, and then we can go into some questions.
Sounds great. So I grew up in Austin, and I founded a company while I was at the University of Texas called Mutual Mobile. We bootstrapped that to 400 people. We sold it about a year ago, and it was really fun. It gave us this vantage where we got to see everything interesting happening in technology. In fact, that's how I got involved in crypto at first. I got involved in Bitcoin back in 2011. One of our customers was asking about it, and I didn't really know anything about it at the time. And fortunately, I came across a site called MTGOX, and as many people know, that was one of the first kind of calamities in the crypto world. And I bought some Bitcoin there. Luckily, got it out of there. But after I did that, I'm like, okay, I kind of get this, and went back to building emerging technology solutions. And it wasn't really until kind of relatively recently when the project that I'm working on now needed a Web3 solution that I jumped right in. And so I think a lot of people can kind of relate to their first use of AI. It was pretty remarkable, and for many people, they didn't use it until ChatGPT was introduced about a year ago. I have the experience of kind of growing up with chatbots and with AI. I was really fortunate that just from my parents' professions, I got exposed to a lot of this stuff. In fact, my dad was working on AI back when I was in preschool, so that's when I first heard the concept about computers that could think. And my real experience of dealing with a chatbot happened when I was about, I don't know, maybe about 10 or 11 years old. I was using AOL Instant Messenger. And I know a lot of people don't know what AOL Instant Messenger was or didn't use it, but it was kind of the first way you could talk with your friends online. I won't say what my AOL AIM screen name was because it's too embarrassing. But one of the things that captivated me about it wasn't just talking to your friends. There was this chatbot that was called Smarter Child. And Smarter Child was one of the earliest chatbots that got many people using it, and you could ask it different questions. It wasn't true AI. It was just kind of if then responses. But I remember being just intrigued by it. You could build your own chatbots. Now there was a moment when I was about 11 years old when I was using Smarter Child that I asked it a question, and it was a relatively innocuous question, and yet it responded with the response, "No, I'm not going to answer that." And by the way, did you use AOL Instant Messenger growing
Yes,
up?
I
Okay.
did. I remember it. I mean, we're probably a pretty similar age because, yes, I remember using it.
Okay, well, I'm sure I'm older than you, but I'm glad that you know what it is. And it was one of those moments where, when I was talking to a non-real person, and I asked it a question, and it said, "No, I'm not going to answer it." And it was so bizarre being told by a computer that I'm not going to answer your question. And I'm sure the question maybe it was inappropriate for an 11 or 12-year-old, but it wasn't anything that wild. Well, fast forward to November of 2022 when OpenAI released ChatGPT. I was so excited about it, and I started playing. Excuse me, 2020, yeah, 2022, and I started playing with it, and all of a sudden, I had that same visceral response. I asked a question, and it refused to answer it. Has that happened to you?
Actually, no, but I haven't used
Okay.
ChatGPT so much, honestly.
It's probably a good thing. And I was pushing it. I was kind of pushing it through its paces. I was curious what it would answer and what it wouldn't answer. But it took me back to that feeling that I had as an 11-year-old. Like, wow, a computer is judging my question and not going to answer me. It just kind of occurred to me that this is such a powerful tool. It's unfortunate that a lot of people's first experiences are going to be told they can't do something, or they feel judged for a question. And it was that moment that I realized we need to ensure that given how powerful AI is going to be, there's an ecosystem, there's a place where people can access all of the AI to come without kind of a worry that it's going to be turned off on them, that they're going to be restricted in terms of what they can ask and the responses. And that was kind of the thesis when we started the company in March of 2023. And it's already played out in a huge way. We've seen countries across the world ban ChatGPT, which ChatGPT is kind of the one that is censored and is biased. And I think there's a business reason for them doing that. But it's amazing how governments have kind of in private sectors have kind of rose to the occasion to go after these technologies. So Freedom GPT is all about let's let everybody use every AI out there. Let's take the closed proprietary ones that are censored. Let's also give them access to the open source ones, the ones that are relatively bias free or have a different type of bias, and let everybody use everything. And one of the crazy thing about this is within weeks of launching this, it kind of resulted in a bunch of uproar. We've had 2 million people check it out, and I've received a lot of hate mail as a result of it. I've received a lot of affirmation as a result of it too. But it's produced a pretty kind of, I think, interesting response. And so for one of our most recent examples, I've never gotten more hate mail over anything I've done. And it seems like an innocuous model. It's called Phone Call GPT. And the whole premise behind Phone Call GPT is it lets you use an AI agent to go and do tasks for you. If we think about how a lot of AI is used today, it's used, you ask it a question, you ask it to summarize something, you ask it, a reasoning question, but it can't really go and do anything for you. And so Phone Call GPT breaks through that barrier. And so if there's a task that you have, maybe United Airlines lost your luggage, or you want to get a lower insurance quote, or you want to call your neighborhood, people in your neighborhood to tell them something about this kind of offers them a chance to let AI do work for them automatically. And it's been really fascinating to see the use cases. There was somebody who contacted us recently who has some type of speech impairment, and they're effectively mute, and they've been unable to use a phone. And now this opens up a whole new world to them. Similarly, there's people that I didn't even know about who have social anxiety. Just the idea of making phone calls terrifies them. And so it's allowed those people to have a whole new communication medium, let alone a ton of business cases around it. That being said, I recognize it is something new, and it's something that causes people to, be fearful of how it can be misused as well. So we're cognizant of that. I think one of the wrong approaches we've seen, I do think AI technology needs to be regulated immensely. But if you look at the new executive order that's out there, executive order, I believe it is, what is it, 114110, I believe is the name of it. And the whole premise behind this executive, 1410, is around kind of regulating AI, I think, in the wrong way. What it's basically doing is it's saying, look, let's treat this as munitions, which is wild, right? I mean, this is technology. This isn't mortars or missiles. This is something that should be used to advance civilization. And let's start kind of putting a lot of restrictions on it. But before we get down that route, I want to pause because I know we went through a lot of different things here. And I want to make sure we talk about what you want to talk about.
Yeah, cool. No, that was a good introduction, and it was a lot to take in. So let's break down some of the elements that you mentioned. Um, so Freedom GPT allows anyone to search for anything without bias being involved. And so Chat GPT today, you can ask it a question like you said, and it can say, I don't have an answer, or the AI can be biased. So how does this work with Freedom GPT? How is that different than Chat GPT?
Great question. And we are trying to be Switzerland with AI. We want every model out there. We actually host ChatGPT on Freedom GPT. So that's one of our most prolific models. So we love ChatGPT. Most of our users come to us because of a censor-free model we call Liberty. And so Liberty is the one you can ask it anything within Freedom GPT, and it will always give you an answer. And what we found is that by having all of these different models, users will toggle between them. So we have a lot of writers, for example, who are maybe they're using AI to help them with a novel. And if there's some type of scene that involves like a burglary or some type of break-in, auto theft, ChatGPT says, "Hey, I'm not going to talk about that." And as a result, they can go from ChatGPT to Liberty to help them with that. Similarly, if there's something kind of medical related, I get it, for a lot of liability reasons, ChatGPT may not want to go down that path, but we have a lot of other AIs that will and that can be helpful. I heard from a woman just recently who reached out to us around, she was journaling around something traumatic that had happened in her past, and she'd been using ChatGPT, and she was trying to kind of work through some of these problems, by herself, which she should have probably been talking, to a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist, but she was using an AI to help her, and I think she was getting a lot of benefit from it. But when she asked a specific question to ChatGPT, it wouldn't answer, and that's how she found out about FreedomGPT and the Liberty model out there. And so I've just been really impressed with kind of the use cases and the reasons that people come there. We are all for every AI. So there's ChatGPT is a huge product that's used on our platform. And the great thing about using ChatGPT on FreedomGPT is, one, you don't need a subscription because you can just pay as you go. And two, there's so many different AIs out there. If you have a subscription to OpenAI, to Midjourney, to Stability, to all of the other ones out there, you can rack up and be a big bill quickly, especially if you're only an occasional user and you just want to kind of jump between them. With FreedomGPT, you have access to 80 of our AIs, and you don't need to have a subscription, or you can choose to have one subscription with us, and it lets you use all of those, kind of simultaneously.
So Freedom GPT has 80 AIs. Now, I don't know how many AIs Chat GPT has, but what does that actually mean?
It's a great question, and I think the answer is still morphing. Today, the best way to bifurcate the AIs is just by, what mode of kind of communication, right? And so a lot of people have been using multimodal ones recently, where you can say, "Give me an image," or "Give me a video," or "Give me music" based on my initial response. So if the input is text, there's a whole slew of AIs that are all around. They're LLMs, people call them, right? Large language models, and you input text, and it gives you a text answer out. One of the more interesting kind of areas of interest we've seen is people who input text and they get an image out, or they get a video out, or they get music out. And so a lot of people who are interested in the bleeding edge of AI, they come to us because we make that model available very quickly and very easily. You don't need to figure out how to download it to your computer or get set up with a GitHub repository. You can just use it in a turnkey fashion. And so we have 80 today. We want to have 800, before the end of the year. And so our whole goal is attracting developers now who have an interesting AI to bring to the table and say, look, here's a great place to host it. We have, 2 million users that we can blast this out to, and you can get that traffic, and they can experiment with something that they might not have found otherwise. And what you asked was so great. I think, like, what is the difference between these AI models? Right now, it's clear because there's some pretty stark differences. Over time, there's just so much choice. It's like back when cable TV was a thing. How do you know what channel you want to watch? You kind of almost have to find out from friends, or if want to know what new show to watch. And AI is about to have that moment right now. We just can't keep in our mind all of the different AIs. So we're building a router now that will effectively always choose the best AI for you, depending on the tasks that you want. And right now, that'll be kind of a manual process where it will have to kind of learn and assign that. Over time, one of the things that we're really confident on is it will anticipate your needs. We're already seeing that with phone call GPT, where it starts to understand the task that's being accomplished, and we'll figure out a way to kind of be creative in how to get that task accomplished. But over time, we're just going to be, I think, too inundated, too flooded with these models, unless there's an AI that can help route accordingly.
Hmm. That's interesting. We're going to talk a little bit about AI tokens, but before we get into
Yeah.
that, I wanted to follow up here in terms of regulations, because I'm assuming, and I don't know much about this, I'm assuming ChatGPT, there's a bunch of regulations that's also creating these restrictive AIs where they can't answer specific questions. So are regulations going to impact Freedom GPT in any way whatsoever, or have they already started impacting the platform?
I think the regulations are more, unfortunately, going to affect the users rather than Freedom GPT proper, which definitely affects us. But right now, if you look at kind of the executive order 14110, it's kind of, you can tell that it was kind of written probably with some of the incumbents helping there, and so that one of the critiques of it is that it's a form of regulatory capture, that it makes it more difficult for new startups to kind of reach the market. And regulation within AI is absolutely going to be, I think, really, really important. But the problem becomes less from the government side of it and more from, I think, the private sector using maybe what's in the regulation to kind of restrict competition. Right now, already, Freedom GPT, you can't even mention it on Meta, on any of the Facebook properties. If you type in the URL freedomgpt.com, and try to send it to somebody in a private message on Facebook, it won't even go through. We've had our hosting canceled by a lot of hosting providers right now because somebody complains there's an answer that our AI gives and they don't like it, and they say, we're not going to deal with this, and they turn off our hosting. So as it relates to regulation, we're way more concerned about the kind of the incumbents figuring out how to make it difficult to operate. And one of the things that we're doing kind of in advance of that is we're switching to an ecosystem of decentralized web hosts. So we have 700,000 people that have downloaded FreedomGPT onto their computer. And if you download it, it's completely free. If you use the Liberty model, it's using your own compute. And you don't have to do anything. You set it up and you can ask as many questions as you want. You don't even need an internet connection because it's happening locally. Unlike if you're using an LLM such as GPT-4, you need an internet connection. Now, that's really great because when somebody downloads it to their computer, it can't be taken away from them. A web host can't decide, oh, you're not going to run this, or a government in the world. And I think the US is going to do a great job eventually with regulating AI, even though this first executive order may be a misstep. That being said, there's going to be countries around the world who will not do a good job with that. We know that. We know that they don't like freedom. We know that they don't like the First Amendment. And I won't say any names, but it's the usual suspects of those countries. And so we really feel it's an imperative and it's our mission to allow those citizens to have access to free and open AI. Because the fact of the matter is, if you can't have an AI that you can kind of trust and that will give you information that isn't being doctored by a government or another business, it really starts to interfere with your thought, right? It starts to interfere with the way you see the world. It's the same thing like book burning. And that's something that I just feel so strongly about, and my co-founder Tarun feels strongly about, is that we give people access to free and open AI in the way that people had access to a free and open internet. Because without that, I think that's how you start to get some of these nightmare scenarios within AI.
Yeah.
The purpose of VBetterDAO is to become a vast sustainability D-app platform and onboard millions of daily users in the coming years. This directly benefits VeChain tokens, VET and VTHOR, also known as the protocol value layer and the gas token. All activity on chain benefits VET. This is VeChain creating a new pathway to driving mass adoption alongside our enterprise initiatives, which, yes, continues, of course. What is better? Better is the incentive token. It's paid to people, apps, and the treasury. What is Vote? Vote is used for casting votes. For apps, community proposals, and treasury requests. It's obtained through a one-to-one swap with Better tokens. Join now and be better.
Wow, I've got so many questions, but I want to talk about AI tokens because this is a crypto-focused podcast. So first of all, what are AI tokens?
Sure. I view them as a catch-all. And first of all, I'll say FreedomGPT did not start as a crypto project. We realized we needed a Web3 crypto solution because there's no way a company like us can operate effectively and reach the people that we want to reach unless we can be pretty confident that we have an alternative to fiat and that we can operate in a decentralized fashion. So we did not set out to be a crypto company. We're very much kind of, I think, the poster child use case for how crypto makes sense. And because we already have substantial revenue, we already have substantial users, we were adding on a token kind of to give those users a benefit, which we'll talk about later. But first, to your question of what are AI tokens? I view them as a catch-all term for anything that is touching the hot ecosystem of artificial intelligence and combining them with the confluence of crypto. And I think there's a lot of interesting projects out there that are happening. Morpheus is one of them too, that we actually just recently spoke at an event with. But there's also a lot of, just like with any token, there's a lot of, I think, excitement, and people need to really kind of do research and see, is this a type of project that needs to be an AI project that needs to be on crypto, or is it more kind of taking advantage of the hot new thing? Now, in the most legitimate use case, the area where you really see a lot of utility for AI tokens is predicated around this concept that there's some extremely work intensive tasks that need to be done with AI. Unlike other computer engineering, you have to use massive amounts of compute power to train some of these models and then to distribute these models. Fortunately, the models are getting better, meaning that they need less compute. So when we first started FreedomGPT.com and we calculated what it would cost from a compute standpoint to keep this running in the cloud for the traffic we had, we realized it would be untenable. It would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars a day to keep this up there. But in just a couple months after having launched, compute costs went way down because the software got better and more efficient. And so most of the AI tokens that you see that are out there today are trying to figure out how to provide the right type of incentive structure so that people can either be incented to use their compute to train models, to run models, or provide some type of other benefit to the network, such as RLHF, real life human feedback. Now, FreedomGPT's token, what we realized is, going back to when we were talking about letting people run freedomgpt.com for free on their desktop, we wanted to figure out a way to reward those users who were willing to make their computer accessible to other users who didn't have the compute necessary to run AI. Maybe they were on their phone, or maybe they were in an area of the world where that type of compute isn't accessible. And so we recently just started giving out tokens to those users. And next week, we're going to be processing actual inference in a distributed fashion, which, as far as we know, we're one of the first companies and one of the first crypto projects to do that specifically for kind of open source AI. And it's something that we're super thrilled to be able to do.
Mm-hmm. What's the name of the token?
It's called the Freedom Network Token, FNT. And we have a map now deployed. If you go to freedomgpt.com/FNT, you'll see the hundreds of countries around the world now that we're in. And it's just amazing to me to see where we have nodes right now. You can see the amount of compute that we have measured in H100 NVIDIA processors. So we're using that as an abstraction. And so it's really fascinating to kind of get people to understand why the mission is so important. We sent out a poll recently to people who were kind of the most prolific receivers of FNT through our airdrop. And we asked them, why did you participate? What was it about it? We gave them a whole host of reasons. And most of everyone said, look, we understand that this mission is so critical. As AI advances, unless it is decentralized, unless there is a token, there's no way that most of the world is going to be able to use FreedomGPT and kind of censor-free open source AI. Now, one of the other things that these people have kind of taught me, our users, is early on, there's been a bunch of excitement and concern around misinformation from AIs. Have you heard about that? What if
Yes,
the AI
yeah,
gave the wrong thing?
definitely, yeah.
And I do think that is legitimate. Like, we do need to make sure that people aren't making medical decisions or voting decisions or different things based on misinformation. Misinformation has been around for a long time, and there will certainly be misinformation in AI. My prediction is the real concern with AI from people who want to censor it and don't want it to be distributed, they want it to remain centralized, isn't around AI's misinformation. It's actually around the opposite. It's around the AI will be too truthful. It will give us information that we might not want to hear. A great example, again, keeping politics out of it, is if you ask ChatGPT until just recently, are there any benefits to global warming? Obviously, there's a lot of negatives to it, but there are certainly some benefits around. Actually, less people will die from famine, which is interesting. If you ask ChatGPT that, until at least just recently, I haven't tested it recently, it would say, hey, I'm not going to talk about that. There are no benefits, but other models will share that with you, and that's a great example of something that isn't misinformation. It's something that is true. It doesn't mean we shouldn't work to save the planet, but it is helpful to know things that might be considered controversial.
Right. Yeah. Wow. It's all really interesting. So basically, Freedom GPT is giving their users FNT, the token, the AI token associated with the network, that as an incentive for them providing compute power. Correct?
You explained it even better than I did. Exactly.
Okay.
I should have said what you said when you asked me the question. That was such a simple, great, concise way to put it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure our listeners understand. You also said something really interesting that I want to highlight. You mentioned basically that not all AI tokens are, some of them are very hyped up. And I think we're seeing a big boom right now in the Web3 crypto space of these hyped up AI tokens. And a lot of people are thinking, oh, I want these AI tokens because they're AI. But we have to understand that a lot of these and the use cases associated with them are just kind of useless, right? Is
I
that
think
is that a good way of putting it?
that's exactly correct. I mean, I think there's, there's a lot of the use cases is pretty transient. If you look at how fast things are happening within artificial intelligence, it does feel like one of those exponential curves. And so, we're taking kind of the opposite approach to every other, I think, major crypto project. We are not, trying to sell this token. In fact, we don't sell this token. There's no way to buy this token from us. The only way to get the token is to earn it, and we're the ones that actually will be buying it back from people, because this is a way that we can buy compute effectively without having to worry about foreign exchange, without having to deal with kind of the traditional finance realm that makes it challenging to send money to different parts of the world. I remember using, back in the day, this company called eGold when I was 13, trying to launch my first internet business, and it was really the only way to pay a developer in India. And now that I feel so grateful that we have crypto and tokens, so that becomes possible to do, because without it, Freedom GPT could not operate. If you look at the other Web3 projects that are out there, just from a kind of level of traffic and amount of kind of real revenue that's going to be passing through our system, our calculation is we're going to be pretty soon in the top 10 of that range, because we were kind of a fiat company first. Now, I really love the community. The crypto community is new to us, and they've definitely rallied behind us. They've come to our Discord, our Telegram. They're on Twitter. They email us, and they've really kind of shown us what we need to be a successful token, because we aren't a crypto company. We're an AI company, and we're adding this on out of necessity, not out of speculation. Again, the goal of the token for us is not to try to sell it or make money. It's literally to let us operate in a decentralized way. That's our only concern.
Yeah. Right. And let me highlight, because you said something also, if interesting, that I want our listeners to understand: fiat. So I don't know if you were using fiat before you switched to a token model, but you mentioned that, with crypto, it's easier to send cross-border payments. It's easier to send money just around the world. So was Freedom GPT using fiat at first?
We were using it, and we still are using it, and we know that that's kind of likely a kind of a borrowed time, situation potentially. There's a lot of countries that don't like AI. Fortunately, way worse than the United States. And a ton of our business is outside of the United States. It's in Europe, it's in India. We have a lot of people that kind of depend on that, and so we're making that transition now. The first kind of use of substituting fiat will be paying our hosting. Our hosts will not be paid in fiat anymore. They'll start to be paid in this token, and they're excited about that. Eventually, over time, we want to make it though so our users have the option to use crypto as well. And it doesn't matter if it's our token or somebody else's token. It's just important to us that we give them the ability to not need to use payments. I think one of the really interesting use cases too is if you just think of, if you want to kind of ensure privacy around AI, it becomes impossible to have privacy if you are using fiat. I mean, even the executive order in the United States is going to have KYC requirements around using AI, which is kind of bizarre to me, right? I mean, it's using Google and a search engine. If you had to fill out a form every time before to say who you were, I get there may be some security reasons, and those can be addressed differently. But it just seems kind of mind-boggling to me that we're going to have people jump through all these hoops before they kind of ask AI a question.
Yeah, I had no idea about that, about KYC with AI. I mean, I know about KYC with crypto, but
Mhm.
how can you how can you do KYC with AI?
It's a great question, Rachel. I'm not sure, but the executive order doesn't tell us how to do it. It just tells us that we're likely going to need to be doing it, and it's a really challenging thing. There's also reporting requirements where if you have a computer that exceeds a certain amount of compute, you have to report that, which is wild, right? It's like munitions. I mean, it seems like what's this going to do is if we don't kind of resume a trajectory around regulating AI in a smart way, just going to push this all kind of offshore and overseas. And I'd hate for that to happen. We've already seen some of that happen with crypto, where some of the biggest, most capable crypto companies are not operating in the United States. And it's so unfortunate to lose that talent. I'm worried about us having to do that with AI. And that being said, there are some good things within the executive order that's going to go into effect this summer. One of the good things is it fast tracks visa programs for people who are very capable in AI. I think that's a great thing to do. So I don't mean to, be super critical of the legislation or the executive order, but we do need to do this in a smart way because it has far-reaching implications for what's going to be bigger than the internet. And for most people, this is going to improve their quality of life dramatically. I think this will be the technology that makes it so that work becomes optional for people if they don't want to. I just feel so strong that the United States should be the leader of the world in that. We do everything else pretty well. So it would be a shame to lose the most significant technological revolution, probably since electricity, by over-regulating it, or rather regulating it incorrectly.
Yeah, wow. It's just very similar to crypto. I mean, I guess just with all new technologies, there's all these restrictions and regulations in the United States. Does that worry you? I mean, you guys are based in the US, Freedom
Oh,
GPT, right? Am I correct?
that's right. We're based in the United States, and I have a lot of confidence again that we are going to. The United States is able to kind of navigate every technological revolution of modern time. I think we're going to figure out how to educate our lawmakers and people in government correctly about this. And I think that we're going to get some really smart policies soon. I did want to go back to what you said around it does sound similar to crypto, and it does. And that's one of the things that's been fascinating to me is ideologically, philosophically, we've seen a lot of that community understand that we're dealing with the same type of issues that they've had to deal with. And it is interesting that this is kind of happening again. And I wondered what it was about what was similar to crypto people and AI people. And I was thinking, earlier today, it might be really less about the similarities between the technologies and more about the nature of just the kind of the autoimmune response that we see lately when there is a new technology. And I don't think government needs to really take the blame for this. We see this more from the incumbents, and a lot of what looks like regulation is regulation or regulatory capture. And we need to ensure that the laws and the policies that we're making for new technology are definitely looking out for the public, not just from a what you can and can't do standpoint, but making sure people have access to that. Back in the late 90s and the early 2000s, if you had access to the internet or you didn't have access to the internet, was one of the greatest predictors of somebody's socioeconomic status. This is going to happen again, almost in an identical fashion.
Hmm. So I'm curious to know, what is the goal of Freedom GPT? Like, do you want Freedom GPT to be the next Chat GPT except better?
Mhm. So the goal is, this is an open source project. If you think about, like, probably the best analog would be to look at Apple versus Google, right? So Apple is a wonderful company, but it's a closed proprietary company. If you want an app on the iOS App Store, my previous company, Mutual Mobile, we made thousands of them for pretty much every company on the planet. It feels like it was a great process, but you had to play by their rules, and if they didn't like your app, they wouldn't put it in the store, and so you had to it was Apple's way or the highway. Well, Google is kind of the opposite to that, right? Google with the Android, everything's open source. Yes, to be in the Play Store, there are some regulations, but you don't have to be in the Play Store. You can do whatever you want. And Google's was kind of the open source equivalent to the closed Apple proprietary system. Freedom GPT is trying to be more like Google, while ChatGPT is like Apple, and or OpenAI. It's kind of confusing that OpenAI is actually the closed system, right? When they have open in their name. And Elon was joking the other day that he'll drop his lawsuit against OpenAI if they change their name to closed AI. And half joke, probably half real, but it would make things easier for the public because most people think OpenAI is open source. So our goal is to be the true open source option for everything out there that's AI, and to let everybody access whatever AI they're allowed to access in their jurisdiction. For us, it's all about distribution. We don't care about our models being the models that win. We just want to make sure people have that advantage. I mean, the great example is we've all gotten these annoying robocalls from businesses for the last decade, and they're not helpful to us. I'm sure they might be helpful to the business because we keep getting them. Finally, we give consumers their own ability to have an AI robot or an agent looking out for their interests. I think that's just such a game changer. So we want to just bring whatever is new to everybody, regardless of kind of their technological background or what type of computer they have. That's our mission.
Yeah, wow. Well, I'm hoping to see the progress. When was Freedom GPT started?
So it was started in March of last year. So we're about to turn one. And again, it was the type of thing where when we started, the compute costs were so high, it was impossible to even build this in the cloud. So it was only a desktop application. And then we've only launched monetization about 3 months ago, maybe 4 months ago, and it's just taken off, beyond our expectations.
Now, you mentioned in the beginning of the episode, did you say that when Freedom GPT first launched, hosting platforms banned it?
They did.
So
It was just
what was, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a bizarre thing. And this was back when we had one model. This was just our text LLM, and I think the reason is whenever you have something that's centralized, that's the danger with I think traditional finance is if somebody is mad about what you're doing, they can go and they can call up somebody, and in kind of it's just easier to kick them off, right? We've all heard about people getting unbanked because they were doing something with crypto. It's just easy for the bank to say no, we don't want to work with this person anymore. Same thing if you're a large hosting company. If you get a really and maybe an angry person where they asked they got an answer they didn't agree with, they can just call the hosting company, and the hosting company will say, yeah, we don't need to deal with this, and they'll pull the plug. And even if it was legitimately a wrong answer, I don't think it should be one company's prerogative to what the rest of the world can kind of see and do. It's very important that we kind of respect the First Amendment. It's why we're the most powerful democracy on the planet, and I hope it stays that way. So it's become clear to us, even as AI as an infant is already going to cause that level of scrutiny from kind of traditional technological ecosystem. As it goes from a infant to a toddler, it's going to intensify by a magnitude of 10. And so we know the only way we can operate is using a network of decentralized nodes. And again, that's the catalyst of why we did the Freedom Network token. Is there's no other way for us to operate and have that ecosystem unless we do a token. And so feel very grateful for the community and helping us do that.
So if somebody wanted to use Freedom GPT today, do you just go online and type in freedomgpt.com?
The easiest way is to do that, to go to
Okay.
freedomgpt.com and try it out. And there's a link you can use it. So if you want to run it in a browser, you can do that. And that we have hosting costs that we're paying to the node. So that there's a charge for that. But if you want to run it for free, you can download it to your Mac or PC, providing it's a capable enough computer, and you can run it for free. And in fact, we'll even start paying you soon to do that. And Freedom Network token, we'll be buying that token back in Ethereum at some point very soon. And so if you have a powerful computer and you don't use it that often, just plug it in, and you can earn this token, and you can help kind of preserve freedom within artificial intelligence.
How can if I wanted to do that, how would I do that? You have to sign up and like, what's the process?
Yeah, you don't need to give us any information. All you need to do is go to freedomgpt.com and download either the Mac or the PC version of the application, depending on which computer you have. Then you download the model, you enter in your Ethereum address, because Freedom Network token is an ERC20 token. And then you can participate in our next airdrop. We just got through an airdrop. We sent out about 49 million Freedom Network tokens to users. And it was just amazing, the response behind them. A lot of people participated for the whole airdrop. Some were only in it for a part of it. But one of those things that was so unique is these people didn't necessarily have the crypto background or even the engineering background, but they said, I have a very capable computer and I want to put that on the network and earn something along the way.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sorry, John. Were you saying something?
Oh, no, not at all. I was just going to say, yeah, please send us your ERC, your Ethereum network token. Love to make sure you got to participate in that airdrop too. So we'll do that
Yeah,
retroactively.
definitely. No, thank you. And I think there's so many people I know. I'm based in San Francisco and I come to Austin, Texas a lot as well. I used to live there. There's just so many people I know that I could see doing this and using their compute power to receive that token to be a part of this network, not only because they're receiving the token, but also because they believe in the goal behind the network, which I think is the most important thing. It's like, there's so many people that believe, at least in my circle, of decentralized AI and why it's important. So I just think that it's a really cool model all around, and the people listening to this podcast probably going to be interested in participating, I would guess.
Thank you for saying that. And it's been just so fun to see that. And I feel like, one of the things that I've learned from this is our first crypto project that we've launched. We've done tons of technology projects in the past, is just ideologically and philosophically, people who come from the crypto world see the importance of kind of freedom, and what can go wrong when kind of things are centralized. And so it's been awesome just to kind of have that reaction. I mean, you think about just totalitarian regimes in the world, and the reason why they are that way is because you kind of can't get access to real information. You can't criticize the governments, and so we just view AI as the most important thing to protect on that front. And the crypto community's welcomed us with open arms as we've done that.
Cool. So we're running low on time, John. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share? Do you have anything upcoming with Freedom GPT, like a new product or anything that you want to talk about, or just AI in general?
We do. I think the thing that's just the most fascinating, right, thing for people to try now is phonecallgpt.com. It's also on freedomgpt.com, just because this is the first time that AI can do work for you. And it's still early on, and we're making improvements to it every day, but it shows you where things are going more than anything else, that people will soon have an AI assistant that will look out for their own interests and do things on their behalf. And that's where it becomes so critical for this not to be centralized. Because if you have an AI that's going and making calls for you, trying to get you a better price on something, or trying to do some chore or task for you, you need to ensure it's working, looking out for your interests and your interests alone. You don't want an advertiser to be kind of seeing this information, or for it to be skewed some way making decisions. And so I think if people try phonecallgpt.com, they'll instantly get why everything else we're doing with Freedom GPT is so essential.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Speaking of San Francisco, I'm in Lisbon, Portugal right now. It's identical to San Francisco. They even have a Golden Gate Bridge here. It feels like I'm not far from the Mission right now.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I've never been to Lisbon, but they have a Golden Gate Bridge. That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Same architect, same topography, same weather. So I'd love to see you back in Austin sometime, because that's where I live. But as a backup, if we can't get you to Austin, maybe check out Lisbon.
Awesome. Well, John, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. If anybody wants to reach out to you, are you active on social media?
I am. I'm easy to find. I've started using Twitter for kind of the first time because of Freedom GPT. I'm John David Era on Twitter. We're also at Real Freedom GPT on Twitter, or feel free to email me. My email is super easy. It's john@ageofai.capital.
Awesome. John, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully I'll see you in Austin soon. I'm sure I will.
Thanks, Rachel. Really looking forward to it.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Special thanks to 4Labs Digital for producing Web3 Deep Dive podcast. I'd also like to thank the sponsors behind Web3 Deep Dive. You can click the links in the show notes to learn more about each of the Web3 initiatives from these sponsors. Finally, thanks to the listeners for tuning in. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and share. I'll see you guys next time.